What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. The finale of season 2 of The Bad Batch has arrived. I just finished watching it and let me say, that did not go the way I was expecting at all. I thought we were going to come into these final 2 episodes and the Bad Batch was going to make their attempts to save Crosshair, and they were probably going to do so in some capacity. There was going to be some reunion, and then in all likelihood we were probably going to get somewhat of a devastating ending where Crosshair probably died. That was my guess. I was kind of hoping that he would live and get a chance to go on and live his life, or, you know, something like that, but it doesn't matter because these 2 episodes went in a completely different direction than I was anticipating. So episode 15, the first of the 2, does start off with the Bad Batch going after Crosshair. There's a big meeting scheduled between high-ranking Imperial officials. Dr. Hemlock is set to attend. Also in attendance are Grand Moff Tarkin and Director Krennic, and a couple of their other contemporaries. So the Bad Batch arrives on the planet, they infiltrate the base, and that in itself was an impressive feat because as we saw, it was a very difficult thing to do. And while they're inside, they start noticing that a lot of the security cameras in the building are turned off, and they're like, well, that's kind of weird. And it turned out that Saw Gerrera was also on this base at the same time. He knew about the meeting and he wanted to hit the Empire where it hurt, kill some of these very important Imperial figures, and destroy this massive base. And so after Hunter and Tech discover that Saw is there, they have a little bit of a discussion which distracts both of them from their plans, and then the Empire finds them and everything goes haywire from here. Saw's group ends up escaping, but the Bad Batch has a tougher time. They get caught on the train rails, the Empire comes after them. You guys saw the episode, you know how it goes. Tech was at the control tower and then he ended up trying to get back to the crew, and that proved to be a fatal mistake, which again was a massive surprise to me. Tech is hanging there from the train and he realizes, I'm gonna have to cut this line or I'm gonna pull the entire train down with me and they're all gonna die. And honestly, right when the train fell and Tech was hanging there from the line, I had a bad feeling. I pretty much knew that he was probably going to die. It kind of reminded me of a movie I've seen before. I think it's The Day After Tomorrow, where there's a guy hanging from a line and he ends up cutting it because he realizes that the person that he's with is going to die as well if he doesn't cut the line. And the same exact thing happened here pretty much. Tech sacrificed himself to save the rest of the crew, and his act was not in vain. He did save the rest of the crew. They would have died if he didn't do that, but he did die. And then Omega and Echo and Hunter and Wrecker are sent crashing through the building. They're involved in a massive explosion and they end up recovering, and they head back to Ord Mantell to receive medical treatment from AZ. And here Sid disappoints us. She turns the Bad Batch into the Empire for a handsome reward. This was something that I had suspected Sid was probably going to do at some point. I feel like it's been a long time coming, and it was definitely a big mistake for them to go back to her, especially after they'd stayed away from her for so long and they'd pretty much cut ties. I had a bad feeling about them going back there, and I'm sure a lot of you did as well. And so while they're on Ord Mantell, Omega really starts to process what happened. She remembers that Tech sacrificed himself and she's like, we have to go back, but obviously they know Tech was dead and they tell her we can't go back, and so she sort of starts to come to terms with that. Hunter tells her that they're going to settle down and sort of give up this life now, and Omega's like, yeah, I want that, like that sounds good. And then the Empire arrives, and then we see Hunter and Wrecker and later Omega as well all get captured. Echo helps Hunter and Wrecker to escape in the end, and Omega would have been free as well if she had just left as Hunter told her to do, but she insisted on going back to help her brothers, and that ultimately got her caught. And so we end the episode with Omega captured by Dr. Hemlock, and Echo, Wrecker, and Hunter are free, and they're going to go looking for Omega. They're not going to stop until they find her. Tech has obviously passed on, and then we have Crosshair still alive, recovering from the experimentation that Hemlock has been performing on him, and Omega actually finds Crosshair. He's still sleeping. He doesn't wake up when she goes up to him, but Omega and Crosshair are now together, which really sets us up for Season 3. The Bad Batch is going to go after Omega, and while they're after Omega, they're probably going to find Crosshair as well. At least we hope so, right? And then also in this scene, we learn that the doctor who has been working for Hemlock is actually a female clone as well. She reveals to Omega that she is her older sister. And this was a big surprise to me. We had gotten hints in earlier episodes that maybe she was important. It seemed like she was going to become important and there was something mysterious about her, but I hadn't really put that much thought into it, and I didn't really see that coming. But what a twist. What a setup for season 3. And speaking of that, something I'd been wondering over the last few weeks was whether this was going to be the end of the Bad Batch, like the end of the series, or if we were going to have a season 3, and that question was answered right here. We are obviously set up and ready to go for season 3. Not sure when exactly we will get that, but season 3 is pretty much a guarantee, I would say. So aside from the main Bad Batch story that focuses on our main characters, there were a couple of other things throughout these 2 episodes that were worth mentioning. During the meeting between Tarkin and Hemlock and Krennic is asked about Project Stardust, and that is obviously a reference to Rogue One. Project Stardust is essentially the Death Star project. It was the project named by Galen Erso after his daughter Jyn Erso, and so that was a cool little Easter egg. Also, at the end of Plan 99, the second episode that we got today, there was another setup for what I assume is going to be a focal point of season 3. Hemlock sort of dangles Omega over Nala Se's head. He says if you refuse to cooperate or if you fail to deliver what the Emperor is requesting, then Omega will suffer the consequences. And I would definitely guess that Nala Se is now going to cooperate, at least in some capacity. And that is probably going to contribute to Palpatine's master plans on Exegol and his ability to come back after his death in Return of the Jedi. So, overall, these 2 episodes were very bold. They were not what I was expecting at all, but I did think they were very good. I'm not sure that I would say this season was better than season 1 in my opinion, although I haven't seen season 1 in a long time. But, I mean, regardless, I enjoyed them both. It doesn't really matter which one we thought was better. I really enjoy this show, particularly like the last 6 or so episodes of this season. I really got into it a lot. I'm always really intrigued by the episodes with Crosshair. I really like the character of Omega, and the rest of the crew as well. I think it's a really fun show, and I really like what it's starting to do in terms of explaining Palpatine's master plan and getting into both how the clone troopers were phased out of the Empire and how the Kaminoan technology that was created for the Clone Wars is now going to feed into Palpatine's agenda for immortality, his creation of Snoke, his creation of Dathan, and even the eventual birth of Rey. I kind of think that we're eventually going to get some sort of tie-in between the Bad Batch and the Mandalorian. Not that the 2 timelines will ever intersect, but I do think that the cloning that we're exploring in the Bad Batch and the Mandalorian are sort of going to come together, and probably along with other projects as well, whether they be books or other TV shows or a movie or whatever, in order to tell a more cohesive story of how Palpatine eventually was able to cheat death and ultimately return in The Rise of Skywalker. But that is going to wrap things up for me, so let me know what you guys thought about season 2 of the Bad Batch. Let me know what you thought about this finale, and share your hopes and predictions for season 3 of this series down below. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to support my content, please remember to drop a like to support the channel, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and may the Force be with you always.